they meet face to face. That narrow space where blue and violet confide.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jonathan Gill and you're watching Local Indie Live. Today we are here with singer-songwriter Axon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been playing music and writing songs my whole life. I've been doing it professionally for a half a century. I stopped playing for a while. I broke the CMC joint in my left hand, and I quit playing for 7 years. And one of the consequences of that, I mean, there were other things going on at the same time, but basically I was able to make the pivot from a high-functioning alcoholic to a raging alcoholic. So I spent 3 years in recovery, and then decided maybe it was time to start playing music again. And so a lot of my songs, well, all of my songs are about recovery in some way or another. Some of them are explicitly about that. And that's just been kind of what I have to say. Is it's I call them 12th step songs. The 12th step in the 12th step program is help others. So this is how I'm doing that.
And I understand you not only perform but record as well, don't you?
I do. I have a new CD out. It can be found. It's called Pub Fare. It's music. It was recorded live in microbrewery tap rooms, and so it's got that kind of live feel to it. And it's getting some notice. It's getting some airplay. I'm pretty happy about that.
That's great. And I noticed that you play both acoustic and electric guitar.
But they're both Cordobas.
It's a favorite, huh?
Yeah, they make great guitars. They make really great guitars, and yeah, I usually the electric is kind of my daily driver, but this is kind of what I write on. And some songs just sound better with the acoustic, and so I switch back and forth.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your writing process?
Well, most of the songs that I've recorded, they start off as some changes. I'm finding some chord progressions that I like and that have a feel to them, and I try to grasp what is the sentiment that music is trying to get out, and then I sit down and write the lyrics that align with that sentiment. What's different about the songs I'm going to play sitting here with you today is that they're sort of outside of that process. That's kind of a standard process a lot of songwriters use, figure out the changes and then write the words. But this one is called Dharma Waltz. It started out as a poem. I had an idea and I wrote it down I have a file on my computer called Stranded Lyrics, and when I get an idea or hear a cliche used in a different way or whatever, I write it down. So I wrote down that first line, and the second line came to me. And so I wrote that down. And then the third and fourth lines came to me as a couplet. And I wrote those down, and it really took me about 20 minutes, and I wrote 16 lines. And I thought of it as a poem. I didn't really think of it as a song at the time. And then some months later, I was fooling around with some changes, and I really liked how they sounded. I really enjoyed that, but they didn't flow. They didn't have the kind of flow that I wanted, so I tried it in a different time signature. And as soon as I did that, I realized this is the music for that poem. And so I put the two together. And it's about a physical, metaphysical, metaphorical, mythical, mystical, infinite point in time and space, equidistant between grief and grace.
Cool. This is Axon with Dharma Waltz.
Sometimes I wrestle with my demons. Mostly we just coexist. Sometimes we spar. Sometimes we spoon. A couple times we've even kissed. It's a delicate negotiation when ego and instinct collide. They meet face to face in that narrow space where blue and violet confide. It's just a few cycles of spectrum, with a visual Doppler effect. There's no way of knowing if you're coming or going, and it's later than you suspect. Electrons charging gases in an instant, photons divide to enlighten the sky, delighting the eye where blue and violet confide. We sit for silence, we pray for peace, like a terrier after a rat. Stoke despair with desire. Where there's hope, there's fire. Where it's even simpler than that. The Sutra of Loss isn't surprised that something beloved has died. That koan lies and the final goodbyes where blue and violet confide. So I guess you could say I'm doing okay, as long as you grade on the curve and not by the measure of the trash or treasure, or even by what I deserve. 'Cause there's a chewy, creamy center sublime. It's there for the seeking inside. Just drifting and dreaming in three-quarter time, where blue and violet confine. Just drifting and dreaming in three-quarter time, where blue violet confine.
That was Dharma Waltz with Axon. Boy, that was a pretty song.
Thank you.
I noticed that you use a lot of open string chords.
Well, it's just part of the recovery from my CMC thing. I quit playing for almost 7 years before I picked up the guitar again. I went 3 years finding the bottom of the, and then 3 years finding my way back to the edge of the cliff I'd fallen off of, and I wasn't any happier or more contented or integrated than I was before. I thought, well, maybe I ought to go back to playing music, but how am I going to do that? Because I don't have the right insurance and I can't afford the surgery. And I realized, well, what I could do, and I'd sold off all my good guitars. I had a 36 Gibson L4. I mean, I had some nice axes. I sold all that stuff off. I had this $50 guitar I bought in Costa Rica, classical guitar. And I found that if I kept my fingers moving, I wasn't holding them down. And the thing I was trying to avoid was using my thumb. And I found that if I could integrate open strings into my voicings, I'd get a fuller sound and do less harm to my hand. Well, I've since had the surgery. I can do bar chords. I can do all of that now. I just don't. Mm-hmm. And I'm told by those who should know that my guitar technique is somewhat impressive, but mostly I'm just cheating. I'm just trying to get around not having to, hold a chord down for a full 4 beats, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where that came from.
I love those chords. They're quite exotic. And I really enjoyed the sort of major minor tone of them.
Well, and the other thing is I played a lot of jazz before I quit playing. I had been playing jazz, mostly in a lot of Latin jazz, for about 10 years, which uses a diminished seventh chord. And a diminished seventh chord, that's like that. Well, I was hanging my thumb over to grab that bass note. That's what messed up my thumb. I've since learned that one, but anyway. And a kid came up and asked me after a gig one time, said, I play guitar too. I want to be a great country guitar player. What do you recommend? I said, well, if you want to become a great country guitar player, the first thing you got to do is become a mediocre jazz guitarist. And I could tell by the look on his face, this was not the pro tip he was looking for at all. But there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I got these jazz chords, and a friend of mine calls my music hayseed jazz, which
great.
beats Americana if you want to have a name for it.
Sure. So this next song is called 21st Century Cowgirl?
Yeah, and what's different about this is a true story. Most of my songs are works of fiction. I think of a tale I want to tell, and I build it around that. And I kind of learned that from listening to a lot of James McMurtry songs. I'm a big fan of James McMurtry, and one of the things I like about him is his lyrics always sound like they were conversations he overheard in a Waffle House after the bars closed. But if I've learned anything about songwriting from him, and his father was Larry McMurtry, Lonesome Dove, and a bunch of other good stuff, is if you're going to write a generational novel in 3 choruses and a bridge, you got to make a lot of stuff up, and then you got to leave a lot of stuff out. So I was fooling around with some changes. And these are just your basic OG country type changes. These are Jimmy Rogers changes. If I ever get a hit with this song, I'm going to owe the estate of Jimmy Rogers a pound of weed. But I was was trying to, because of Jimmy Rogers changes, it was either going to have to be a railroading song or a cowboy song, and I don't really know a lot about either of those things. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, but I didn't really have a lot of interaction with livestock, and the first time I ever encountered a cow in the wild, I ran from it. So
probably wise.
But I got a friend on Facebook who works as a freelance livestock management generalist on a 6,000 acre ranch down in New Mexico, and writes about it on Facebook. And I was stealing details from Sheridan's life to try and write this song, and it just wasn't coming together. It just wasn't authentic. And I realized this is really her song.
21st Century Cowgirl by Axon.
21st Century Cowgirl.
She's a 21st century cowgirl, but not in that rodeo way. For $1.50 a day, her meals and hay, she'll ride all day and she'll sleep where she may. Her steed is a trusty four-wheeler, her Airstream's her bunkhouse today. Her GPS tells her she's home on the range where the deer and the antelope play. Now the 38 Special that rides on her hip, it's no good for moose or for bear, but the rounders all know it ain't there for show, but none of them dare to find out why it's there. Such men as she needs are like hired hands. She works them hard and sends them on their way. She's a 21st century cowgirl. Yippee-yi, yippee-oh, yippee-yay. A bull elk bugles, an elk harem sings, the Milky Way shimmers, she lives for these things. She'd rather sleep with coyotes and snakes than some wealthy fine gentleman and all that he makes. Her life is her own, so don't you judge her. You're in no position to say she's a 21st century cowgirl. Now if the life that we're given is for living, and death's just the end of our trade, well then it isn't that strange that she's at home on the range. She works hard all day and she draws equal pay. She's a 21st century cowgirl in her own 19th century way. She fixes her eyes on beyond the horizon, and the skies are not cloudy all day. She's a 21st century cowgirl. Ooh, where the deer and the antelope play.
That was 21st Century Cowgirl by Axon.
She really likes that song. I sent her a copy of it. And she's always saying, "Oh, there's a guy. But when I wrote it, I was living in Chico. She goes, "There's a guy in California wrote that song about me." So if I get a Grammy for it, I'm going to write her in as a co-writer.
So you're a finger picker, aren't you?
I am, and that also came with the new approach to guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've reached the point where I would never play with a pick, maybe a thumb pick,
Mm-hmm.
but because why would I give up 5 picks for one? I can do all kinds of things that I couldn't do with a regular guitar pick.
For sure.
So
you have one more song for us, don't you?
I do, and
What's the name of this song?
this is called "For All."
For All.
I was inspired by, there's a songwriter named Scott Cook, and if you get a chance, look him up. He writes great songs. And he wrote a song called "Say Can You See?" It was about working people being what makes this country great. And I've always had a resentment about the Pledge of Allegiance since I was a little kid, because, well, first of all, I defy you to produce a 9-year-old who can define indivisible and explain it in the context in which it was written. It's just, and we're forced to recite this thing, and it's indoctrination is what it is. And I suppose patriotism is one of those things that's maybe not a bad thing to indoctrinate people in, but it can get out of hand. And it just seemed like it was so what this is a love letter from the boomer generation, my generation, to the Zoomer generation, Generation Z, the ones who are right about where I was when the mid-'60s hit. And it's a challenge and an invitation to them to pick up the torch, because we're heading into some dark times and we need that young energy. And it showed up not long ago in New York with the election of Mamdani. So I'm going to take credit for that with this song.
Okay. All right, so let's hear it.
Okay, this is called "For All." When I was just a schoolboy, the teacher had us stand before class would even start, with our hands over our hearts, rehearsing words we couldn't understand, with a lot of syllables, like allegiance and indivisible, extracting this sworn oath of loyalty. It's a lot to ask of one so small, but the promise offered was self-evident to see, like it was written on the wall, all about liberty and justice for all. So when we reached our majority, took our business to the streets. We had a mission to complete. We were just questioning authority to put an end to war, hatred, poverty, and more. How did we dare defy the status quo with such unmitigated gall? But the words they taught us told us all we had to know.
just answering the call of liberty and justice for all. Does anybody ever really know how time goes by so fast? Someone told me long ago, nothing lasts. So now a half a century has passed since then. The pendulum has swung back where it was when we were young. Malignant forces are on the rise again, prepared to let the planet burn for the dividends they'll earn. The rage of civil disobedience, a new generation must enthrall to thwart the will of spineless, greedy men and force them up against the wall with liberty and justice for all. Then good fortune may befall with liberty and justice for all.
That was Axon with For All. Those were three great songs.
Thank you
so much. So how can people learn more about you?
Well, if you go onto the internet, which is catching on, and you search on Axon songs, you'll pretty much find my repertoire out there. I've got it on SoundCloud and Bandcamp, and I'm on all the socials, and everywhere music is just given away. And you can hunt me down on SoundCloud. You can hunt me down on YouTube, and where I hope some of this video will appear one day.
You bet.
And this is what I do.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming here today and being on our show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'd like to thank you all for tuning in today to Local Indie Live. My name is Jonathan Gill, and on behalf of everybody here, we thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.
Sometimes I wrestle with my demons. Mostly we just coexist. Sometimes we spar. Sometimes we spoon. A couple times we've even kissed. It's a delicate negotiation when ego and instinct collide.